Hello, and welcome to another episode of Father and Joe. I'm Joe Rockey, here with Father Boniface. And Father, we talked a couple times in the past about how you can't really go through life without having faith. Not necessarily faith in God, but faith in at least the system, faith in someone. Just as example, today I woke up by an alarm clock. I had faith that Apple was telling my phone that it was the right number. It was going to keep track of it, and it actually was the time I woke up. I mean, that's a very basic thing. And I think that there's an opportunity when we look at things not to be cynical and go, well, there's no real need for connections or belief that there's God involved in this process at all. And I actually look at this from the other angle, in that, especially in my business context, because I do it the most in there, I'm looking for referrals. I'm looking for connections to people that, I can help both as a client or just help them with free knowledge. And the people I get referred to me, even if it's from a third-party list service, I have no control over. I don't know these people. And then eventually, obviously, a connection is created with them. You build a relationship, etc. And I look at that as, so often when I meet with them, it's like, you just entered my life at the absolute perfect time. Like I am so glad I met you when I did. You were able to help in so many ways. And obviously I just got done doing a business podcast yesterday, so I have all these examples in my head. But the point being is, we can see this in our personal lives as well. And I think that that's one of the remarkable things of faith that, in my opinion, should be thankful for, but so many people take for granted or discount, like, oh, that's who was on the list. That's who I just got recommended to, without ever giving the thought of, this happens a lot to a lot of different people. You have your own lot of memories of either someone coming in your life or you coming to someone else's life at the right time. That can't be a coincidence across this many times, etc. So that's the phenomenon I kind of want to talk about today, because it's been just like in my face for the last week about how much that has happened.
That's great. Yeah, well, a couple of things arise when you share that, Joe. One is that you are a pretty positive person. As long as we've been talking, and you have a pretty positive outlook on life. You've had a lot of good things happen to you, and you hold on to the good things. And so even for you to kind of start from that perspective actually really helps. So it turns out that neurologically, when we think of good things, when we cultivate gratitude as we see the positive experiences we've had in life, that it actually does really good things in our bodies. And you can feel that, you feel good when you remember the good things that have happened to you. And there are in abundance, if you set your mind to it. And depending on, how flimsy a connection you'll allow. I know some people who are just, it's like, today is June 27th. Do you know what that means? Just like, I have no idea. 6 years ago, this thing happened, and 7 years ago, that thing happened. And then, it's like, and sure, why not? I mean, I'm not discounting that at all, but I tend not to work that way myself. I just don't make those connections so much. But some people are really see some of those connections, see connections of, I met this person 15 years ago, and then they knew this person. Well, we just taught a course here at St. Vincent for our Institute for Ministry Formation, and there was a woman in the course who is a consecrated virgin and a quantum physicist. And there was a guy in the course who was building a business and looking for a quantum physicist. There was another consecrated virgin in the course that she hadn't met and opened her to some other things. She was from Kansas, and there were people in the course from Kansas who happened to know like friends and relatives of hers. And so she just found this nexus of connections taking place. And that puts us in a positive space when we see that, especially if we're, people are by disposition a little bit more, glass half empty, glass half full, as we often say. And especially for somebody who, when we can make the decision to be a little bit more, positive, optimistic about these things, we see those connections. it feels good, and it opens us up to seeing other connections. And we have a general sense that, like, things are good, God is good, someone's in charge of this who is kind of stacking the deck, and it feels like it's in my favor. And I think that's just another way of saying what you started out with. And then I would just push on things a little bit from there. Like, is that just random? And you would say, well, it happens so much. Well, how much is so much? At what point does it become meaningful and not random? How much arranging of things does it require to say, no, there's definitely somebody good in charge of this? Well, in some sense, you can never prove that. So we
Mhm.
stack evidence until the point that we are convinced enough that we say, I think I'm just going to go forward with that presupposition. Somebody is arranging this. It's not just random. Things are being put together. And then that helps us to lean into it a little bit more, especially when things aren't coming together. So when that young woman planned to come out here for this course, she had no idea there was going to be somebody interested in quantum physics and some other consecrated virgin and people from Kansas. But because she is a believer and because she has seen the evidence in her own life, she can actually lean into it. And especially, maybe she has some anxiety. I think she did, actually, about coming out, and there's some other pressures. And she could actually make the act of faith. It's going to be good. God has a little treasure for me. In the video game world, they call those Easter eggs, right? There's an
Mhm.
Easter egg hidden away here for me. And I don't know that for sure, but I feel confident enough that I can say that. And and that gives us a different way of entering into it. If we enter into it with a kind of pessimism, or just overcome by anxiety or something like that, we could really be weighed down. But having that weight of evidence, having faith, gives us something that helps us to push forward into all of that. Now, I want to acknowledge that these things are not only, especially as people by disposition and by their personal experience may not even have enough foundation to say that, or may know that abstractly. It may be hard. So I want to acknowledge that. I know people who would like to do the kind of thing I'm saying and find it not so easy, and still get overwhelmed, not by their
Sure.
own choice, of the negative things. So, but just on the one hand, we can push into the positive and have courage and confidence that somebody's working all these things to the good. And then it really stretches into the very negative places. So you don't have to read the news too far to see people for whom horrific things happen. I mean, there are real names and faces. There are real innocent people caught up in wars and, I don't know, detained, deported. There are people that get falsely accused of things, clergy that get falsely accused of things. There are people whose lives seem to be like a night with no dawn. And even in that space, and that's where faith can really be a great support for us, we can say and believe, even this is not greater than the mercy and the creative goodness of God. Even this, God will bring good from in ways I can't even imagine, but I have a reason for hope. And that sustained people through concentration camps and through pretty horrific circumstances, to have that kind of, and that's a gift. Again, that's a skill that we practice, but it builds on a gift, and it's supported by a gift, which is God's grace strengthening us in faith.
And first of all, I did this. First of all, I'm glad that the way I described this wasn't like, I have no idea what you're talking about, and that people get this. So there is a certain moment where it's like, am I the only one who feels this way? Because I gave this setup because I think that what I'm trying to build to here is an act of trying to do, especially now that I have a 3-year-old, of how to live like a child, because that's what the Bible says to do. Those who act like a child, can see the glory of God. I might be butchering that sentence as I'm saying it out loud. I read it in the beginning of the week. I'm probably butchering it now by reading it off memory now. But before I had a 3-year-old, I always kind of took that as, well, kids don't know anything. They really don't, they just have to blindly follow. And now having a 3-year-old and being able to see it from the adult perspective, that's not the case at all. They're constantly working on building more skills and trying to learn more while simultaneously being open to everything. And yeah, they have some things that they've learned that they shouldn't do by now. Jumping down the steps can lead to you falling and that hurting. Don't touch stuff that's hot. That kind of stuff's in there, but it's still under the context of I'm going to trust the people who tell me what I can do. And now all of a sudden, Daddy's letting me jump down the steps if he's there to catch me. This is really fun and cool. Like, I wasn't allowed to do that 6 months ago, but now I am. And I might be mixing things together that shouldn't be mixed, but from a professional context, that's kind of what I'm thinking of is I don't, just as the example you said, I have no idea who's going to be at this event. I have no idea who's going to be there. And I'm just going to have faith that it'll work, that this is the right place for me. And this isn't, as we said, foolhardy or walking in blind. This is, I've done some skills. I belong here, based upon the knowledge. I'm qualified to be here. I think that I can contribute value to the team, et cetera, to the class. I can get something from this. So it's not that they just randomly walked in and said, oh, this is the place no matter what, that I'm going to be able to set my roots, even though it's a biker bar on fire or something like that. Just to pick some random example. There's still context and guidance and direction, which also comes from, I believe, thinking about what would be best for you in the context of your mission here with Earth. And one last point I want to hit on before I give it back to you was, I love the fact that you said that it is a choice, because to me it is. I mean, I still have things that creep in my mind that I remember from my past that I wish would have gone differently, or I wish I would have done differently, or differently would have happened to me. But I still come with this mindset of, let's try to look for the positive. I think I try to live in a realistic state with a shade towards positive. I don't want to be crazy optimistic and then have the reality crash down on me. But I've just seen so many people that live in pessimism constantly, and that's a conscious choice I don't want to do. So in some regards, it's another argument for the faith. I see those who are sad, depressed, lost, just drifting through life, hoping and clinging, and then getting taken advantage of because they're clinging to anything that'll take them. That's not the direction I want to go. So again, these are all choices at the end of the day, and why I personally choose to lean towards faith and an optimism that naturally comes as a result of that. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, well, I would again say it's not equally easy for everyone, and so while it's we are free and we can make choices, and then it's up to us to, if there's a little window of hope, do I seize that window or do I push against it? And anyway, I'm very sensitive about people who can't easily choose those things. I mean, whose lives have been really heavy, and even from psychological depression and things like that, it's not so easy as just saying, oh, everything's going to be okay. There's a way. We really need somebody to be in it with us. That's one of the beautiful things.
Is it basically like the argument for karma, or momentum rather, not karma, but momentum, that you keep going down that road, you're going to keep going down that road, and it gets further. And it's very hard to turn a ship around. It's not, you got to get a lot of momentum.
There is a positive feedback loop that can develop and a negative feedback loop that can develop, that as we get dragged farther down, because, if you think of it like this, what really helps us, I know it's not going to come as a surprise to you, Joe, that relationships really help us with this. Because when we're in a hard place and someone can help us to hold the pain, it really cuts the pain and gives us a positive outlook, gives us a reason for hope, helps us to look forward. And then we have a little bit of momentum, like you just said. And as we start to think like, well, yeah, it is going to be okay. Somebody's in it with me and I'm not alone, and we can make forward progress. And then as we make a little forward progress, we feel a little more forward progress, and that can have a positive feedback loop. What happens when we're in a negative place is, first of all, we're often cut off a little bit from relationships. We're isolating, we're pulling away. And then our disposition, our lack of energy, even our negativity can push away relationships away even further. And then the less support we have, the more we need, and the worse it gets. And so that can be a real negative direction that those things can go in. And again, there you can see the beauty of the Christian faith, right? What does Christ call those in a positive feedback loop to do? Reach out to those who are in a negative feedback loop. Go to the margins, seek out the lost, find the sinner, raise up the lowly, give hope to the hopeless. And that's where we really see, it's not just every man for himself. If you can get in that positive feedback loop, you can get that positive momentum. Just keep going and get to the finish line first. No, like, invest it back in those who don't have it. In addition, we don't want to lose what we have. Certainly, it's not that I have to feel bad if my life is positive. That's not the point. But if I have extra, can I invest it in somebody who's never going to get themselves out of the negative place? And that's where we can really reach the opposite end. But I think, partially in your mind and how we start out the episode is people who might be somewhere in the middle. And then it's like you can make a decision and move in a positive direction. You can look at the real good things that are happening and how little you're actually responsible for them. I'm so aware of things like I've published a number of books, and none of them are, million copy bestsellers or anything like that. But a couple of them have sold 10,000 plus copies. And the only reason that is the case is it happened to, get to this person, get to that person, get involved in that program, get placed that. And why my book rather than someone else's? I mean, whatever. There's something that spoke to somebody. It's not totally random. And yet it is pretty random. There were probably 30 other books it could have been, and it was mine. And, so there are a number of little choices, little decisions, even like the thing with the National Eucharistic Congress. I ended up being one of the people leading Eucharistic adoration, not because I'm better than every other priest in the world or that there's any kind of objective measure. There's something a little random. I got to know this particular woman at this, particular conference, and she was connected to this other person and mentioned my name, and it came up in a meeting and somebody made it, it's like a lot of these little things coming together. And again, I can just say, oh, that's just good luck. It'll never happen again. I won't trust in it. Or I can say, well, the Lord is in that and he has a purpose for it. And I can feel good and confident about it. And he's going to continue bringing blessings into my life. And so that decision to see the positive, to see the Lord's hand in things that could be considered random or incidental, there is a decision that I can make many times. I just wanted to also acknowledge that decision can be easier at some points in our life and can be very hard for people. And sometimes we need the help of someone else to make that decision to move forward in faith and hope.
Absolutely. That's amazing. And it brings two concepts that I've heard not really ever together, but I kind of going to put them together, and hopefully this doesn't mush. Hopefully it's like peanut butter and jelly. It's a good combination instead of two magnets repelling. But I have heard the expression, you can't give what you don't have. I can't give you something I don't have. Like, how am I supposed to give it to you? And I also know firsthand from life is that when you share something with someone, you both grow. So particularly when we're talking about the virtues, you mentioned, I have a happy life, I have a joyous life. I should not feel bad about that. No, because when you're giving something to someone else that's creating joy, happiness, etc., especially if it's not a finite thing, such as a material, but an actual exchange of energy, I guess is what I'm trying to get at here, where you're giving your energy, your thought, you're building a relationship is the crux of what I'm trying to say there. Both of you benefit from it, and it's supposed to be that way, or you amongst many. And it makes me think back to, no matter where you're at, we all are given certain tools when we're born. We all know how to talk to each other. Now, certainly some of us do it better than others. You have a very good way of being able to articulate very complicated things, to be able to have a regular person who's not super extra educated in the space be able to understand you. And there's some people that if I had them up here, they would trip over the cordless microphone. I mean, that's just the way that it happens. And there's nothing wrong with having different skill sets. And I understand that we're all in different places. And as you said before, those little choices can lead to momentum into a negative feedback loop or a positive feedback loop. And I guess what I'm trying to give as far as a call to action to conclude this episode is think about the next little choice that comes your way. Could it be down a direction of positivity leading to helping someone or leading to a deeper relationship with someone and leading to hope? Or is it a decision that goes in the opposite direction of that, where it just doesn't? And I'm not saying that we all don't need a break or anything like that. There's not time to shut down. Trust me, I have a newborn that's waking up a 3-year-old and vice versa. I get the need to shut down and be by yourself. But as far as an overall essence of, am I trying to connect with people and grow and making those little choices to be a positive feedback loop of recognizing the gifts that are all around us and that I received. So leave that as the homework for today's episode and a thought to move forward as we'll be with you for next week.